Absolutely.
All right, so we'll jump right in. It is April, it's not April, it's March 11th, 2026 Olympic Region Clean Air Agency Finance Committee meeting, and we will call this meeting to order. It is 8:32 a.m. and we need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Beautiful. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. The agenda is approved, and then we need to approve the minutes from February 11th. I hope everyone had a chance to read them because there's a pop quiz at the end of the meeting.
All right.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair, I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I will second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Alrighty. So we're ready to jump into new business, and we have a presentation on fiscal year 2027 draft budget. And I believe I'll turn this over to Tyson.
Sure. So we're running a new process here, so bear with me. I'm gonna try to do it right now. So.
We're sharing our own screen today. It's good.
Trying.
That's where the pop quiz comes in.
So Tyson was gonna share his screen rather than having Dan run things. That way, Tyson can zero in more on the things that,
If
that
the need
he's
arises.
looking at. Yeah.
Okay, screen is quite busy. Okay, it looks like you guys can see it, great. So I'll go ahead and start here. This is a brief presentation on our preliminary draft consolidated operating budget for fiscal year 2027. This presentation is meant to go over where we currently stand with our draft budget. Because we're in the early phase of budget development, just as a reminder, these numbers are subject to change as new information comes in. We hope to gain from this presentation is guidance from you all on budget goals that we can incorporate into the finalized FY27 draft budget. As part of the Finance Committee packet, we included a stripped down version of our budget, which we hope you have all reviewed. We are not planning on reviewing the budget line by line today, but if there are any questions that come up, we're more than happy to review that budget. So Jeff will start the presentation by discussing the budget calendar, budget challenges, and then wrap up with ways in which we're reducing costs and discussing key budget items. And then I will be covering the operating budget, revenue, and expenditure portions of this presentation.
Okay, well, thanks, Tyson. So, yeah, just wanted to briefly look at the calendar. So again, thanks for meeting with us this month. We those that have been on the committee for a while probably remember that we don't. This is the first time I think in a while that we've actually had a March Finance Committee meeting. We typically bring the draft budget to you in April. But given some uncertainties regarding our grants, the fee conversations we've been having, and some other things, we wanted to lift up a couple things to you today to get your direction. But then at the April Finance Committee meeting, we will have the full draft budget for review and discussion. Then on May 8th, we'll go out for public comment on that budget. Again, because it has to be out for 30 days, we have to go out for public comment in advance of our May board meeting. At the May meeting, we will present the full draft to the full board. And then at the June board meeting is when we'll have the public hearing on the budget and adopt the budget for our next fiscal year. So are there any questions on the, not seeing any questions, of course, please jump in. And hey, Mike.
Hey.
Looks like you're joined us. Great, thanks for being here. All right, so just wanted to mention, again, as we've been talking about, ORCAA is facing some budget challenges. Of course, like with any public agency, our costs are increasing faster than our revenue streams. Of course, as we've also been dealing with, we've dealt with cuts to state and federal core grant funding. I do, so again, that's been a 65% cut to our state core funding, so that amounts to almost $90,000 in fiscal year 26, and then again, about almost $90,000 in fiscal year 2027. And while that's a relatively small percentage of ORCAA's overall budget, the core grant does pay for things that are not fee eligible, and so that's an important grant. I will say that on the bright side, we do finally have some clarity or some certainty about what the federal core grant will, and actually we've got now grant agreement in place with Department of Ecology for that state core funding, and then they'll be amending that grant agreement in the coming week or so to add the federal money. And the federal money it's only about a 2% reduction for fiscal year 26 and 27. So again, there was a lot of uncertainty and didn't know what to plan on, but the money's there, and again, it's only about a 2% reduction. So again, the total there for the federal core portion is a little less than $183,000, both in this fiscal year and next fiscal year. So, and then of course, as we've been talking about, I mean, we had a budget amendment last month for some of these things. We've had some large capital projects in the past year, including our new database. Again, that project is ongoing and going very well, but it is a big capital expense. So we've talked about the building needed some HVAC updates. We need to put a new roof on, and there's just some other building needs.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes.
Could you repeat the percentage and the dollar amount for the state core grant?
Sure. So the state, so we're getting a total of a little over $47,000 per year from the state, and that is a reduction of about $87,500 from last biennium. So that's a 65% reduction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, then with that, I think I'll hand it off to Tyson to talk about some revenue.
Okay, so for fiscal year 2027, we are projecting $533,000 in grant revenue, $1.5 million in fee revenue, $595,000 in assessment revenue, and $261,000 in other revenue. That's combines to a total revenue of $2.9 million for FY27. As with prior fiscal years, fees makes up our largest revenue source at 53% of overall revenue. So comparing projected revenue estimates year over year, we are anticipating a slight increase in assessment and fee revenue and a decrease in other and grant revenue. Increases in revenue in assessment and fee revenue is contributable to adjustments in CPI and increases in fees. Decreases in other and grant revenue is contributable to planned vacant tenant spaces and the known 65% reduction in our state core funding. In addition, the IRA grant will not be renewing for fiscal year 2027.
And just a reminder, that was just a one-time grant that paid for the new monitoring shelter at the Lacey site.
Cumulatively, our overall revenue is projected to decrease by $117,000 year over year.
And if I could just add one more thing, just in terms of fees, so can you see a slight fee increase? As you probably remember, so this fiscal year, we increased our land clearing burn permit fee. And so that's for this fiscal year. And then, of course, we've been in conversation about the asbestos demolition fee and the registration fee increase, which we'll brief the full board on later this morning. But the fiscal year 2027 budget does incorporate those fee increases in that 3.6% increase.
Our overall expenditures for the year is estimated to be $3.5 million. 79% of our projected expenditures is payroll at $2.7 million. Notable payroll assumptions we have included in FY 27 are a 2.8% salary adjustment, a 6.1% pension contribution rate, and a 15% increase in health insurance costs. Comparing expenditures to the current fiscal year, so fiscal year 26, we are projecting a decrease of $200,000 in expenditures. This decrease is somewhat inflated due to the one-time costs incurred this fiscal year, such as the database, fire and security panels, heat pumps, and roof. When I discount the one-time costs, there is a slight increase in non-payroll costs, which is contributable to anticipated audit fees and service fees for the new agency database. So just a quick note, if you reviewed the packet before yesterday, you may have noticed a draw of $650,000, which is represented on the line titled General Fund Contingency Draw Applied to FY Budget. The updated draw of $555,000 represented on this slide is the corrected amount. The $650,000 did not account for the federal core funding at that time. For FY 27, the increase in the projected deficit is primarily due to the increase in labor costs in conjunction with the drop in our grant funding. In addition, we'd also like to set aside $31,000 from unreserved funds and place it into the office building fund, and draw $27,000 from the database fund and place it into the general fund, which are the highlighted lines below. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Jeff now.
Okay. So, yeah, so this slide just indicates some of the things that we're doing. So the fiscal year 2027 budget, again, as you remember from previous conversations, we're holding the financial specialist position vacant. That is, I think it was the right thing to do last year. It's the right thing to do for this year. Filling that position would cost the agency about $84,000. Not filling that position means that, Tyson doesn't have as much backup as I would like. Just a reminder, he's the agency chief financial officer. He also manages many of our HR functions, and he's the building manager. And so, again, he's got a lot on his plate. So ideally, we would be able to fill that position, but again, recommending that we don't fill that. And then these other things on here are things that we're doing just to reduce the costs, make our agency operations more efficient. We've talked about some of these things in the context of our fee programs, but just wanted to, again, these are things that we're doing. Let's see. So if you could go on to slide 10 then. So these are things that, some things that we've got that we're looking for some direction from the finance committee on including these in the full draft budget that you see next month. Just some things that we wanted to lift up. They are, again, I believe that they're important things for the agency. And, as is typical for the agency, we do offer the salary wage adjustments based on the same consumer price index that we are increasing our fees and assessments. So we'd like to include that. We do have money in our draft budget for additional fleet vehicle. We've got a 2016 Honda Fit that has about over 120,000 miles on it that we don't want to get too far behind on our updating our fleet. So we're recommending that we include that. Item number 3 is a project, the SIP update project, and that is described so there was a memo attached to this packet that hopefully you had a chance to take a look at. But that is, so essentially the state implementation plan is a document that describes how Washington aligns with federal requirements to ensure that we're meeting the national air quality standards in our 6 counties. So Washington's relevant state laws and regulations, as well as relevant local regulations, are included in the state implementation plan. And some of ORCAA's regulations haven't been updated in the SIP since the early 90s. And that leads to just some confusion among staff and the regulated community, particularly when it comes to enforcement in terms of what are the relevant state and federal regulations. And so, again, as detailed more in the briefing memo, we're recommending that we make that update. We've got that we include some money in the next fiscal year to do that, $15,000 in fiscal year 2027, and then there would be an additional $5,000 in 2028. And again, there's a couple reasons why I think doing that now is important. We've got somebody at the EPA who's been working with us on this, has already gone through, done a markup of our regulations in terms of the changes that we would need to make them so that they can be included in the SIP. And then also we've got Robert Moody, who many remember, he was a longtime compliance manager here at ORCAA, lots of experience with the SIP. He is interested in working with ORCAA on this. He recognizes that it's an important project, and so he is willing to work with us on that. And so primarily where this expense comes is paying Robert's time on this. Let's see, I think, and so again, more details are covered in the memo, but that's something else that we're recommending. Maybe I'll just keep on going through these items and then we can open it up for questions and discussion after that. The next thing is I believe that it's important to keep funding OLIMAP. Again, this is the OLIMAP is the organization that provides services to the jungle, which is the camp in city of Olympia, where about 200 to 250 unhoused folks live. OLIMAP provides services and helps. So when we do get a lot of burn complaints, particularly from inner city transit staff who are downwind. And so this, I think, so when we do get complaints, we don't send ORCAA inspectors in to deal with it. We call OLIMAP, and their staff have relationships in the camp. They go and they provide supplies and other things. Again, I think this is a much better use of ORCAA's funds than trying to deal with this in another way. OLIMAP has been able to leverage ORCAA's funding to greater funding from the Thurston Regional Housing Council. So again, I believe this is an important ongoing investment for the agency. And then these next couple things are things that Tyson already mentioned in terms of essentially transferring some money from our general fund into these other funds to actually out of the database fund into our general fund to pay for ongoing database support in 2027, and then replacing some of the building fund that we've used because of the new roof on the building. So what's not in the proposed budget, we did take money out. So in the past, we've had money for strategic planning. I think we had $15,000 in fiscal year 2026. As I discussed at the last board meeting, that agency strategic planning effort is on hold for a variety of reasons. So but do not have money to pay for that in the next fiscal year. And then also we do not have funds for a new timekeeping software. We are working on a new database, but there's still an open question about whether or not that database is going to have the functionality we need for a timekeeping system. And so, but we don't know enough about what a new timekeeping system might look like at this point to include money in the budget. So if we do need to move forward with that in the next fiscal year, we'll come back to this body for a potential budget amendment, but just wanted to point out that that is not included. So I think that's it.
That's it.
from me. So maybe Tyson, if you quit sharing your screen and
Okay.
let's, or unless, well, actually, maybe I should, before doing that, do board members have questions about, or anything that you'd like to see on the screen in terms of the budget numbers, that you've got in the packet?
Go ahead, Randy.
So, I've got a lot of issues when I'm looking at this, and I've got a lot of worries as we're going. I need to look a little more at to the budget, but I'd like to see us present before we do anything. We're getting at a dangerous point, and I don't know if everybody sees it like I see it. I can just see it coming. Uh, I'd like to see a breakdown of the last 5 years, 3 years at minimum, year over year at the time, and see what we're doing and how far backwards we are going, so that the others could see it. As a comment, Greg, you may remember I had talked about a while back about making sure we take those penalty funds and stuff like that and separate them out. One of the reasons why I wanted to do that is what's starting to happen now. We have creep in there that we don't even see what's happening because the whole body is eating it up, and you don't see what's going on with it. Eventually, we're going to have to separate that out because if we start talking wages and people, which I think is inevitable, then we need to be looking at those funds for one-time expenditures, such as some of the things that they're talking about. And if you remember, that's one of the things I tried to bring up. I didn't get far enough with it, but I think we're starting to see it now. And you may see it. That's why I'm bringing up your name right now, because eventually we may have to start to make those adjustments so we can keep track of it as we're starting to move backwards. But the main thing I'm asking for, because you asked what we're asked for, 3 years back to back, up to 5, so we can keep an actual idea of what's happening, and where we're bleeding from.
In terms, if I can ask a clarifying question, Randy, in terms of a 3-year or a 5-year back in terms of our fund balance?
Not just our fund balance, because right now, as you can see, it's starting to break out, and we've been doing raises and stuff like that. Eventually, we're going to be at the point where we're going to have to start to admit that we're going to have to ask you to look at reorgs. You're bringing this stuff back to us, but eventually you're going to have to look at what reorg would be. Now, we would make the decision, and maybe we don't do a reorg, but we have to be able to see what those numbers would look like and where it's bleeding from. If we have some areas that we know we're losing money on, we're losing revenue on, and we're not replacing it, then we have to decide if it's time to do something different than that. And we can't do that if we don't have them back to back with each area. So not just the fund balance, each area where it looks like it's starting to bleed backwards. We have grants that are not coming in. We get that. With the grants not coming in, that means that we have to start looking at how much we're paying to make up for those grants out of the other funds. Then you have to come up with the idea of whether we like it or not, is that absolutely a necessary step, or can we reorg and put one person into two parts of this to do what's required by law compared to what we might want to do or what we have always done in the past, just to get along and to take care of our people we care about. I do understand we care about them, but at the same time, you're only going to have 2 options: raise a bunch of money or make some cuts. And each year you don't make the cut, that's more bodies that have to be adjusted when the time comes. If we wait long, if we don't, then we don't have as much to make up.
So, we have, yes, so we can certainly bring that. I mean, Mike has been looking very carefully at expenses and how much are we, each of our programs, how are we operating? Of course, the big unfunded program is outdoor burning, as we've been talking about for years and years, and that's we just don't have, the agency currently does not bring in money for residential burning. This committee did talk about last fall or last summer about implementing a residential burn fee. That is something that we could certainly look at. We have talked about, and again, we'll be talking about it later this morning during the board meeting about expanding our residential burn notification system. And but I think looking at outdoor burning is the biggest area. I mean, that's the biggest unfunded area. We are in terms of fees, so last year we increased our land clearing burn permit fee, and that's a relatively small program, about $60,000. We do believe that those higher fees are covering that program this year. We have seen a drop off in those permit applications. The other permit fees that we're increasing, or recommending increasing this year are asbestos demolition and registration. With those fee increases, we believe that those programs will be much closer to cost recovery. The main program that we haven't yet brought to you, which Mike and Jennifer and others are working on, which we're planning on bringing in the coming months, is our new source review program. So for our notice of construction fees, just a reminder that the air operating permit fees by state statute and regulation we adjust those every year. Those fees have to cover the cost of the program, and so that's kind of in a different category. But yeah, Randy, we'll certainly bring the information back for discussion next month. I don't know, I guess I would ask Mike or Tyson any clarifying
Well, Jeff,
questions.
Jeff,
Yeah.
we can always raise more fees. We can always charge more. I want to remind you that the counties and the other entities, cities are already paying a fee, and we decide what goes to where out of that fee. It's not like these are unfunded requirements. They are funded by us already. We have to look at which ones we decide that's going to be funded out of that, not just always look to raise more money. We just did. We've done some actions in the last couple of years that are, and we're going to be doing more, but it's still going backwards.
And I just mentioned the fees that Jeff mentioned that we talked about in the last budget meeting with registration and asbestos. The asbestos demolition fees, our rules state that we got to recover full cost. We put in the fee thing to only recover 90%. Because I hear what you're saying, Randy, we are committed to making up that difference, that 10% difference, through efficiencies and stuff. And we'll continue to implement that in other programs too, that hopefully we can narrow that negative number and through efficiency. So everything that we have raised so far have not 100% covered the program as it is already. I just want to make sure that's clear. We understand what you're saying, and we are building in efficiencies to help pay or help offset some of those losses that we're not just looking at fees to cover those losses. That's what I'm trying to say.
I absolutely agree with you, and I appreciate that. The only problem is the gap is getting bigger and bigger, no matter how we're doing it. I know we're not sticking it to everybody as much as we could, but that's never the right term anyway. That's like saying, yeah, I slap you but I could have hit you with my fist. It's not the same thing. We do the most we can with the little we have and still try to do better. But no, you're right, Mike. I get that, and we've been kind about how we've handled this. It could be worse. I just don't want it to be worse.
So just a data point for context. So we've ended in the positive going back to 2017, fiscal year 2017. We've ended the fiscal year with a positive variance. Last year was the only year that we ended with a negative variance. So just giving some more context about our actual performance at year end. So.
And I know that too. I think that's what's going to show when we start to put it out. But again, we're taking money from these other one-time, penalties and stuff like that. We're always going to come out okay because we have the money still in the bank. So we're not going to go backwards until all of a sudden we do. And then there has to be major layoffs. I'm trying to stop any of that from happening. But I've been doing this for so long. I've seen when it happens. I see this bow wave. I know others can't see it because they didn't have to go through what I did. But my fear is we end up with a situation where we have to lay off an amount of people, and I don't want that. I've been there. That sucks,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah, and that's definitely a last resort for us as well. So I can't say how much, but I am anticipating a deficit for this fiscal year, and it's due to the one-time costs that we've incurred. I am curious about last fiscal year, how we ended it with a negative variance. I think me digging into why that happened I would like to look into that, especially since we did not replace the fiscal specialist position. So wondering where the leak happened last fiscal year. It may have something to do with Lynn and I, we were cross-trained for up to 6 months, so we had two financial managers for 6 months, so that may contribute to some of it, but that's something I'll look into, Randy.
Thank you, Tyson. I want to get to Greg's question. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, thanks. And I was just kind of following up on Randy's initial question. And as we deal with challenging budgets, I like to see a 3 or 5 year projections. I'm not sure if that's what Randy was talking about, but I mean, with nearly 80% of our expenses in payroll, it's pretty easy to kind of see what's our operational projections a couple years down the line. We're bringing wages up at the same CPI, so a projection of a 3.3% project CPI or something for fees and all that allows us to see, given our understandings and the fixed costs, where are we going to be, and that will help us make some of these decisions. I can't look at the $15,000 SIPs right now with Mark and say, oh yeah, that fits or not. I mean, these all seem like reasonable continuations of programs and everything, and I agree. OLIMAP is a great program, and $8,000 is kind of a rounding error in our budget. But some of the bigger questions, I would like a little bit more projection data on as we really dig into it in April.
Thank you, Greg. I have a question actually about the land clearing burning permit program. So we raised the fees and then we started seeing less permit applications coming in. Do we think that that's a compliance issue?
No, we got a pretty good handle on what's out there. I don't think it's a matter of people saying it's not the numbers. I think it's an economy issue and there's not as much development. Usually if there's gonna be development, first thing that's gonna happen is they're gonna clear it alive. And then if they're in a place will burn, they'll burn because it's cheaper. I don't think we're seeing as much of that in the urban area, rural area, sorry. So that people are having to, are not burning because they're not developing. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing, and we're still seeing a lot, but not as much. And I think the trend, I'd have to go back and look, it's probably been going down on a 5-year trend, probably, just because the burnable lots, if you want to call them that for land clearing, they're the first ones to get bought up, get developed. And then of course, you're gonna run out of those eventually as you're not gonna want to go out in the middle of Forks and put in a development, it's too far away, but that's the only place left to burn, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I just think it's just a matter of time before there's nothing left for people to clear and develop,
Makes
and
sense,
that's where
yeah.
the burning is going, so.
Okay, thank you. I'd be interested in seeing that number year over year when we get the 3-year to 5-year info. I'd like to see how much the permits for land clearing burning have gone down over those years, just to see. I think that's a good point. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so, oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. I just wanted to say, I think I'm kind of on Randy's side on this. The context that, I think it's really important to understand is that nearly every county in Washington state has been going through these kind of pains, either last year or the previous year in the creation of our budgets. So we're familiar with this. We have even harder revenues to manage inflation than ORCAA does. And so I think the sooner that you ring the bell and start, making changes, the better. I think that's the point Randy's making. And so at the end of the day, I know that I'm probably going to be likely to vote yes on some targeted fees where we have the justification to do so. But I think it's really smart to, raise that alarm as soon as possible and say, what's the plan? So, and I know that ORCAA staff is mindful of these things. I'm not lecturing. I just wanted to kind of second everything he said. And I appreciated him bringing it up.
Thanks, Mike. So it sounds like if there's no further discussion or questions, next steps would be for our committee to figure out what we want to uplift to the full board for discussion. And it sounds like staff are needing direction on some of the items in the PowerPoint. So Let's see, looking at slide 10, the last page. The key proposed budget items 1 through 6 are on page 10. Does anybody have questions or comments on the key proposed budget items? Do you like them the way they are? Do you have any suggestions? And let us know if you need us to pull that back
Yeah,
up.
I'm happy to pull that back up.
I have the packet up you know, these are all, I don't have a problem with these. I mean, we do need to supplement the office building fund since we're putting a new roof on. I mean, these are reasonable things and I mean, the only place that we can really make a fundamental change is if we start to say, well, we need to raise fees at a higher rate than we raise salaries. I think that's the only kind of item here that raises to the level of conversation for me. And I don't have an answer, you know, for that. It's reasonable to match it to CPI. And I assume that we're not at all collective bargained. We're just there's no union, right? Yeah.
No, there's no union. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the only one that is a moving target for me as we kind of dig into it. And what others?
If I could just add, so in addition to fees, I mean, well, and I mean, one of the areas, and again, I know that Mike, because Mike French, as you mentioned, I know cities and counties have gone through this, but there's assessments. I mean, so the State Clean Air Act 78-1590 directs air pollution authorities to use supplemental income, which is what the RCW calls assessment, to meet budget expenditures. And so again, right now, so back in 2018, I think the board passed a resolution to increase assessments by the CPI. And so again, as Tyson mentioned, our draft fiscal year 2027 budget does include a 2.8% increase, and that's per capita. So that's and I think so between our 6 counties gained a total of 3,000 people between 2024 and 2025, which is the years that we use to calculate the per capita assessments. But so that is something that's a funding mechanism that local clean air agencies have. Again, it's, you know, you all are going to be making the decision about whether we go there, but that is a mechanism that the board has, in addition to raising. I know that's in some ways a fee, and so I'm not sure if that was, Greg, what you mentioned when you were talking about fees, if you were including assessments, but that's also a mechanism.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So is the 2.8% increase in assessments built into the 2027 estimates in this packet?
Yes, those are, yes.
Okay. So, one place that I would like to look at, and I don't know how the board feels about this or the committee feels about this, but you talked about the asbestos and demolition fees. Even as we increase those, it's only covering 90% of the cost. I'd be interested in looking at a 100% cost recovery on those fees. And then maybe looking at other fees that we have and making sure we're recovering 100% of the cost on those as well, wherever possible.
If I can jump in for a minute, that's great, and I appreciate you wanting to see that number. We have to keep in mind that registration and NSR program, they by state law have some requirements where certain things we can recover by fees and certain things we can't. So we can get the 100% direct cost cover of what legally we can in those programs, but there'll be some stuff left out, and we can spell that out. Whereas the asbestos and land clearing, we can do 100% cost recovery. There is no state law saying you got to leave certain indirect items out. So there'll be a little difference in what we're covering on those. But just so we're clear, we're always going to have some uncovered cost in the registration and NSR programs because state won't allow us to capture all of it. And that's where some of the extra core and assessments have to cover, along with the outdoor burning.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think a conversation with the board about the burning fees and how to expand the notification system is something we should have that conversation soon, because that's one area that we can expand potentially. So I would like to see that conversation come back around. Go ahead, Randy.
I just want to remind you, one of the points that I was trying to make though is, yes, we can always try to raise the price that we charge everybody. We can do a lot of things, but we also can and should look at how we can reduce the cost of doing business. That's the part we have to look at too, and we don't look at that very often. If we miss
Well-
that, the part's going to come back.
Yeah, and I respect that thought, and I actually wanna point you back to slide 9 where it has a list of things that ORCA has done to reduce costs, because based on what I'm hearing today and what I hear quite often, ORCA does a lot to streamline costs and has left some positions unfilled, which has, you mentioned earlier having one person do maybe 2 FTE worth of work. And it sounds like that's already happening with Tyson and probably others.
Even in my position, it's even my
Yeah.
position.
So I think that's definitely, you're spot on, Randy, that's like where we should look, and it sounds like ORCA has already looked at that. So go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, we'll certainly look at that, and if the committee has suggestions, I mean, ORCA is a very lean operation. We have 18 staff, 1 office in Olympia and 6 counties and over 8,000 square miles. I mean, we've got 4 inspectors, so less than 1 inspector per county. Yeah, I mean, we've got a bigger area than any other local air agency in Washington. So I mean, and as we've talked about, I mean, salaries and benefits are the lion's share of our budget. So if you have suggestions on where you'd like us to, dig deeper, can certainly do that. But we're a pretty lean operation as it is. But I appreciate the thought of, we certainly, we want to get ahead of this, and I'm glad that we are having this conversation today, again, so that we can continue moving forward with developing our next year's budget.
Thank you, Jeff. Do you have any thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah, 79%, there's only one place you can go. When there's 79% of all of it, there's only one place you can go. And although it may be correct that we're lean for what we're doing, we have to look at what we're doing and decide what's absolutely necessary and what's not.
Yeah.
And that's where these decisions are made. And it's not to have one person do 2 times the work. What it is we find out what work is absolutely necessary, and that comes off the plate, versus what work is not necessary, and how much that could be spread between a couple of people.
Yeah, I'll let Jeff respond and then we'll get to Mike.
So one of the things that we're doing, as we talked a little bit about, I think at our January Finance Committee meeting where Rob was sitting in for Mike, we talked about, so as of January 1, we've directed inspectors to do less outdoor burning complaints. There's less response to outdoor burning complaints. We're sending a lot more letters. We're spending less time out in the field, and it's looking like, I mean, we've only got a couple months of data from the timesheet data, but it looks like that is making a difference. In last fiscal year, we spent about $350,000 on our outdoor burning program. This year, it looks like it's going to come in at less than $300,000. We are looking at developing a list of, again, what's the outdoor burning that we're required by RCW and WAC to do versus what's the kind of the nice to have, or the more discretionary work that you're talking about, Randy. So we are looking carefully at that. We can bring a list back to the committee, or bring that analysis back, but we're certainly looking at those things. So I think staff hear you, and we're looking carefully at that. I'm sure will be a topic of ongoing discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. Go ahead, Mike.
After Jeff's response, I don't think I need to say what I was going to say. So I think that you're on the right track. I wanted to recognize, that was a really good point about financial specialists being held vacant. There's only 18 FTEs. So I think that you're on the right track. I don't want to make it, I don't want to make the impression that the crisis is larger than it is. We just want to make sure that we're appropriately responding. And I think that point has been made. So I appreciate everyone.
Thank you. And on kind of the same or a similar note, one thing we did at the county, which it was a heavy lift, but that's because we have so many offices and departments. We asked each office and department to put together a list of things that were required by law and activities that were discretionary. And that might be something that we could look at here to kind of get to Randy's point of like, what is absolutely necessary. So if that's possible to put together, I think that would be good for the board to see as well. Go ahead, Randy.
That's exactly what I'm saying, what I'm asking for. That is gonna be our only choice. I don't want to make it sound worse than it is. It's just what it is I've been trying to call attention as I'm watching it slip away. And I really don't want to scare people, but the truth of the matter is the way this works is when it does come to the point to where it hurts and the action has to be done because we didn't take early action, that's what I'm trying to avoid. As somebody that's been doing this a long time, when we wait and we see that it does, hey, it ain't bad, but with that bow wave, all of a sudden it is. With 79%, those are people. So if we do it now and we're doing an 8% adjustments somewhere, that's a lot of people that get to stay at work if we're trying to make up that as cash. That's what I'm worried about. So again, I agree. I don't want to make it sound worse than it is, but if we don't notice what it is, it'll be when it is worse, it'll cost us more for people, and I don't want to cost our people. We have the best people here at this organization. Don't want to lose any. If anything, you prepare by having people that are retiring out and not filling. But that's how I look at it.
Thank you, Randy. Go ahead, Mike.
So this is more of just a curiosity that I have. Is it ever typical for clean air agencies to cooperate with each other on fixed costs or shared responsibilities outside of the area, like between areas?
Yes, I mean, so we do, I mean, one of the areas that you might remember, so Dan talks about, there's a program called Echo Northwest where we leverage our communication dollars by all kind of investing in shared communication campaigns and things. So yeah, I mean, actually, as I will mention during my board update, I was down in Vancouver last week at the Southwest Clean Air Agency meeting. So the air directors meet every couple months to share information. So we're always looking for ways that we can collaborate more. We will be doing a kind of a shared outreach to the legislature in the coming months before next session about can the legislature restore the funding that ecology cut? Not sure. There's similar job-alike groups. Our engineers meet regularly with ecology and engineers from the local clean air agencies. So there is a lot of collaboration. All 7 locals have different sets of regulations, however, so it's somewhat different. But Mike meets regularly with his peers, so that there is quite a bit of cooperation and collaboration between agencies, I would say. Always looking for new ideas in terms of how we can do that, but we do a lot of that.
Thank you, Jeff. I have some thoughts, actually. You reminded me of a couple things I wrote down in advance of the meeting. So one thing I think is important is you kind of touched on the legislative session. I think it's a responsibility of all of us as board members to advocate for these funds at the legislature because we already do that work as elected officials. We already are creating legislative priorities with our jurisdictions, and we're personally going to advocate for certain things. And that's one way that we can help as individual board members, and that can make a huge difference. I mean, if anyone's going to like Washington DC once a year, like the Board of County Commissioners does, I don't know if cities do that or not. We could talk to our congressional representatives, try to get maybe more core funding at the national level. That's a possibility. We could certainly go talk to our state legislators who we might have closer relationships with to really, really push for this and have a coordinated effort. And maybe we could really dig into our legislative priorities as a board with ORCAA. So that going into the 2027 session, which is going to be a longer session, we can have that momentum and have that force, and maybe we can even go together or have a clean air agency advocacy day. I don't know if that's something that already happens. Do clean air agencies around the state do that?
Historically, no.
Okay.
So Puget Sound Clean Air is the largest local air agencies, whereas others, so are typically around 20 or less. Puget Sound Clean Air has about 70 staff. Of course, they have some, something like 70, but more than 60% of the population is in their 4 counties. So they're a little different. They have, they've always had a paid lobbyist. They're very active legislatively. Agencies like ORCAA, I mean, I've done a little bit of legislative work. I've testified at a couple hearings, but less so. I'd say partly because our state and federal funding, while it hasn't increased, it's at least been fairly stable. Again, this is the first year that it has been significantly cut. So I think we do need to look at that. Again, we've got some materials that we're developing as a group of local clean air agencies. And similarly, I've been talking with Dan about developing something that's specific for ORCAA, including listing our board members and other things, so that we and you all would have the tools that you need to help to advocate for additional funding. Again, I know it's going to be a hard conversation. This whole session has been dealing with funding issues, and I don't see that necessarily changing next session. But again, frankly, a lot of people just aren't aware of local clean air agencies and the work that we do. And I think really trying to elevate, just to get on people's, do a better job of getting on people's radar for the important work that we do is important.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's not only one way we can help, but if we're lucky and we're successful, making a difference in that way could be huge. It could be so significant. I mean, the county commissioners go to DC and come back with millions of dollars in committed funds sometimes due to their successful advocacy. So that's one place we could really get some significant funding if we're successful in that messaging to the state and the federal government. Another place I think we could help, which is a lot more, it's a lot smaller, but I noticed that you mentioned the rental income and not being able to fill the spaces here that you have available for rent. That's another area I think that we could push as individual board members. If you know anyone in Olympia who might be looking for office space, I know a lot of you, I mean, you're not here in Olympia, I am, so I could do a lot of that work. But if you know anyone here that might be looking for space, it'd be good to kind of push that out too. It could help a little bit. Because I saw that amount is going down as well. I also have another thought, but I want to stop and see if anyone's got anything to add real quick. Okay, so yeah, so I know when we talk about budgets, it's important to look at some of the things that we've already been touching on. Some of the most important things are streamlining operations to reduce costs, looking at targeted fees where possible, and some of the things we've mentioned. But I think there are also creative ways that we could go about this too, that are sometimes less thought of, kind of outside the box, like maybe hosting a fundraiser, which is a heavy lift to plan events. So maybe we could have like an event committee or something so that board members who have capacity could help with planning fundraiser or something like that. I don't know how people feel about that, but that could bring in some additional funds, and I'd be happy to help with that. So
something maybe along those lines that I've thought about. I mean, I know that was talking to Chrissy Cooley from the Puget Sound Clean Air, and so Congress has annual basically call outs for earmarks. And I know there was just one. I mean, again, that's a project, or that would be a project base as opposed to ongoing funding, which again, what ORCAA is really short of is kind of ongoing funding to support the work that we do. So I'm not sure whether there's a project that would help. Again, we've had some projects in the past, mostly related to some of our monitoring efforts, but that is something else that I think ORCAA hasn't really done in the past that we could certainly take a look at to think about. But
yeah, absolutely.
So I've started to think more about that too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We actually had a legislative breakfast with our delegation at the county back right before session started, and we talked about the community project funding, and they get a lot of requests around the state, but that's one place where, like you said, they earmark money once a year. So if we could get some of that, that would be great too. So in terms of direction for the full board, I think we need to figure out, it sounds like we're all in support of the the items on slide 10 for the key proposed budget items. So can you just give a quick thumbs up if everyone's okay with those items? And Mike, if you don't say anything or come on camera, I'll assume you're giving us a thumbs up. Awesome. So that answers that question.
Great.
And what other direction are you needing?
Well, just some of the items that you all have listed as data points, some more information regarding historical and projected trends. We'll work on that for the next finance committee meeting, and we'll present that information to you guys.
Okay.
Next finance committee meeting, so.
Okay, perfect. So, then it sounds like we might be close to wrapping up with this conversation. I want to just remind folks that, going into these budget conversations, it'll be really important for us to review the materials before the meetings. So, I'll probably be reaching out to nudge folks, so sorry in advance for being annoying, but I'm gonna be pretty annoying going into these next couple months just to make sure we're prepared for these conversations. And then I wanted to also highlight something that was mentioned, in April, when the materials are available to us. I would encourage people to review those materials early, even before, before we're starting to get the full agenda. If the materials are ready before that, we could look at them, and get ready to launch the public comment period, which starts on May 8th. So if we could have all of our ducks in a row and have our full understanding of the budget before public comment starts, then that would be really helpful.
And I'll make a point of I can make a point of reaching out to you also in advance of the April meeting, just to see if you have any questions or suggestions for me. Just a couple one-on-one conversations might be helpful too, as we head into the April discussion about the full draft budget.
That sounds good. I would actually ask, like, maybe Jeff, if you could just reach out to the committee after the meeting sometime.
Sure.
And make that offer for a one-on-one meeting, and then whoever's interested could take advantage of that opportunity. I think that's a great idea. Okay. I also want to add one more thing. We're talking about legislative session. I wanted to let everyone know I attended a meeting last week, completely unrelated to clean air, but it was related to local elected officials and our response to like immigrations, customs enforcement and stuff. We had a presenter at that meeting from a group called Public Rights Project. And Public Rights Project actually offers pro bono services to elected officials to talk about like litigation issues, contract negotiation stuff. They talk about drafting policies, communications, all of this is for free. So I'm actually connecting with them on this note. I'm going to be reaching out to them, asking about a political strategy for advocating for funds for clean air agencies. And I have that meeting coming up next week. So I'm looking for external groups that are available to help advise us on how to push for some of these things. And I will report back after I have that meeting. Maybe next time we meet, I'll have something to share about how that went. But I'm going to be working with them to kind of draft some talking points. And then of course you'll have talking points as the months go on that we can add. But I want to go beyond my local district, which is LD 22, to really try to push for this. I think that's one way we could make the biggest difference as board members. So I wanted to let everyone know I'm kind of connecting with outside agencies to help with some of that stuff. And I'm also happy to pass along those resources when I come across them too. If there's free resources for elected officials, then I can just share that information with everybody. So it sounds like we're good to go on staff direction, and we can wrap up this conversation. Is there any last thoughts or anything staff wants to share?
If I could just add one thing, so as you probably noticed, so on the agenda, and as I've mentioned for the board meeting, we will be briefing the full board on the fee increase proposal. And so again, we've got a couple slides on it, and in the board packet, we made available the briefing memos that we prepared for this committee for our January and February discussions. But would encourage the finance committee to please jump in and add your perspective on those issues when we're talking and discussing them with the full board. Because again, you all have some additional context related to our budget that might help those conversations next in our next meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Beth. All right, well, if there are no other comments, we can move on to our next item, which is good of the order. Do you have any items for good of the order? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, just wondering if you want to preview what you're gonna what you're gonna share from this meeting and the budget process with the larger group.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I appreciate that. Helping me get my thoughts together before we move to the next one. So. Well, I think it would be good to highlight well, let's see, so. I guess I should turn to staff and ask how much you want me to share, but what I'm thinking is talking about the key proposed budget items on page 10, that's important. I'm also gonna share with the full board some of the things I shared with this board in terms of kind of getting ready for the public comment period and familiarizing ourselves with the budget as much as we can. And then probably an update on the core funding, that's a big one too. And I guess then I'll turn to staff and see, is there anything else you think I should add? I'll talk about the legislative advocacy.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I mean, I think just kind of preparing and maybe it's just talking about the timing that the full board will, or that the finance committee will have the draft budget in April. But then we'll be going out for public comments before the full board gets the briefing in May. And so encouraging the full board to review, because again, they will have access to the draft budget when the April packet comes out. Because again, everyone gets the email from Debbie with the link to the board packet, but then the finance committee packet as well. And so just, yeah, I would say just remind the board about the timing of things and encourage them to engage with the materials and to reach out to finance committee members or staff if they have any questions, concerns, suggestions.
Perfect. All right, I'll make sure I remind everyone of that. Any other suggestions on what else I could add?
No,
Okay, all right. What about from board members? Is there anything you think I should add to my report? Okay, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that question. Anything else for good of the order? All right. Well, then we can move on to adjournment. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Okay, not a debatable motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're adjourned then. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
See you at 10.
See you back here in a little bit.